we begin with Israel-Syria relations. The Israeli army said it had fired at and hit a group of militants placing explosives along the border fence with Syria on the Golan Heights. The military said the soldiers spotted the group near a frontier outpost overnight and fired simultaneously towards the squad of 4 terrorists. No Israelis were injured and there was no immediate comment from Syria. Tensions have risen in recent weeks along the Israel-Syria frontier after a fighter of the Iranian-backed Lebanese Shiite group Hezbollah was killed in an apparent Israeli strike on the edge of Damascus. Israel has since boosted its forces on its northern front, where it borders Lebanon and Syria. The military said it holds the Syrian regime responsible for all events on Syrian soil and will not tolerate any violation of Israeli sovereignty. And security expert Kash Ononuju joins us now to talk about Israel thwarting an attempt to lay bomb along its Golan Heights. Thanks for joining us, Kash Ononuju. Now, what do you make of this renewed tension between Syria and Israel?
Oh, well, it's an attempt by Israel to show that it is alert. It is standing guard at all times. And that's why you saw that infringement was removed. It also goes further to strengthen Israel's narratives about its need to hold on to the heights. The Golan Heights were seized as Syrian territory and it's been in Israel's control. And Syria has continued to state very clearly that the United Nations position is that is Syrian territory. Israel thinks it can hold on to the heights and then annex them by staying there with military power. So what you're seeing is a furtherance of that Israeli position that it can hold the heights, it can lay a claim to the Golan Heights and keep it military. That's what they are trying to revalidate.
Absolutely. But we also know that there are other players here. For example, Iran wants to ensure that it puts its military footprint in Syria. And then there's also Russia by the side. So are we going to see a broader alliance here against Israel?
For a very long time, Russia recognizes Israel's claims over the Golan. And it's also at peace with the United States position in regard to Israel and the Golan Heights. It's becoming a show of ownership through conquest. And Israel says that was seized at a war. It has become a conundrum. And Israel's possession through military might, it's what is constantly oiled by behaviors like this from the state of Israel as it lays its claim to the conquered territory of the Golan Heights. These are just basic protocols in that particular narrative that Israel has been saying that it wants to hold on to the Golan Heights. It will not tolerate, as it did war. It wants Syria, that it holds Syria responsible for every action within Syrian territory. So Syria is one. Israel doesn't hide its intention to actually go into Syrian territory. I think it has been doing that, and I think this is a warning for the Syrians. They either control the behavior of Hamas within their territory, or even Iran cannot protect it. And I think that understanding has been reached with the United States. Make sure with the Russia, it's agreed that be sure that nobody comes and don't ever strike things where here if you don't have bridges. And in this case,
Dr. Kash Ononuju, just allow me butt in, because it almost looks like nothing seems to be working in terms of relations between Syria and Israel. We remember the 1949 Armistice Agreement and the 1974 Disengagement Agreement. So nothing seems to have worked. What can be done now?
You were talking about Syria. where Syria was Syria. Syria is no more Syria. Today, Israel sees Syria as part of the territories where Iranian influence could be deployed because of the way people have become compromised in Syria itself, as it now looks like a client state of Shia Iran. But then that is a position. The other people also do have their own understanding. And so Israel sees every action in Syria as an attempt by a very compromised Iranian partner to allow its territory to come into harm. So that's why it takes those positions. As it did describe, it gave its reason that there were Hamas operatives operating right here on the marketing line. So they got called and they took charge of it. So they are telling the Syrian government, please be warned. Anything that goes on here, I hold you responsible. That means if you don't keep the border safe, we'll cross the border to protect Israeli security. That's what this operation means.
Security expert Kash Ononuju, thanks for talking to TVC News.
Thank you for having me.